they're doing the same thing. So staying ahead of that curve, making sure you stay healthy during those hurricanes are important. So without further ado, Mr. Eric Hayden is going to take over and provide us with some great information. I want to thank you for being here in the town of Beaufort. Welcome once again.
For those that have been here for a long time, feel free to share your stories. When we talk about what you have in your hurricane kit, what you would do different, speak up. You have experience in our area and you know what to do. For those that are new to the area, I appreciate you joining us so that we can make sure that we can go over some of the hurricane preparedness tips. The presentation that we're going to talk about, do one thing now to get prepared. Focus on the impacts of the storm. Water is what kills people, and never ever focus on just the category of the storm. There's a lot of misinformation. People focus on landfall, and what is the category of the storm. If you were not aware, the hurricane outlook this year is for an above normal year, an 85% chance that we're going to have an above normal year. Usually, I say don't focus on this forecast too much because we should be prepared every year, no matter what this says. If it says we're not going to have much of a year, it only takes one storm, we should be preparing no matter what. But for a meteorologist to say an 85% chance above normal, that's very confident it's going to be a busy year. So this is a year we're waving our hands, stopping our feet. This is a year you really should be preparing. One of the single best resources you can have, besides the town website and town information, is your local National Weather Service office. I fall under the Department of Commerce and NOAA, big government agency, offices in Maine, Hawaii, Alaska, and Newport, North Carolina. So you have an office down the road from you as you head out toward New Bern on Highway 70. That's our location. If you see the giant soccer ball on the left, that's the Doppler radar. So if you just remember weather.gov, that's all you need to remember for your resource. Just remember weather.gov, click on Eastern North Carolina, and you'll get the local page. I say that because you can have hurricane information, the local forecast, preparedness information, one-stop shop, anything the Hurricane Center says is on our local website. We are all together. And we love jokes in the weather, so if it's the weather you love, it's weather.gov. So that's all you have to remember. But jokes aside, you've already paid for it. It's your tax money at work. Please use your local resources for official sources of information. One of the things we have on our website that is also on the Hurricane Center website is this. This is something you should be looking at each day as you wake up or before you go to sleep. Don't need to spend more than 30 seconds on it. It's the Tropical Weather Outlook. It's updated 4 times a day. It will show you, do we have anything to be worried about in the next 7 days? So a week ago, there was a lot of things that we were watching out in the ocean. Beryl at the time, and we were watching other disturbances that could have formed. So this is nothing to panic about. It's just something, hey, 30 seconds in the morning, is it going to be busy or not? This is something the local news uses as well, and the Weather Channel. So you'll see it on different avenues as well. And those little QR codes in the upper right, if you just scan that with your phone, you can bookmark it on your phone, and I can show you how to do that after the talk if you have any trouble. In addition, another good thing to look at is the forecast cone. Raise your hand if you've seen this before or you're vaguely familiar. It's probably the single most used graphic from hurricanes. You know, where is it going to go? But probably one of the most misunderstood. It shows you where we think the most probable path of the center of the storm will go. It's written very similar to what a lawyer would say. Probable path where the center will go. It is only showing where the center will go. It doesn't show who will be impacted and who won't. It doesn't show how big the hurricane will be, how many days it sits over you, if we're going to get 30 inches of rain. It just shows you where we think the center of the storm will go. Hurricane's not a dot on a map. Those have lived here for a long time. Florence did not make landfall in our area. It was down in Wilmington, but were we impacted? Yes. So this is important. Pay attention to it, but it's not an in or out thing. If you're near it, you should be paying attention. So if it's anywhere from Florida up through Delaware, we should be paying attention to it. As Florence got closer, that cone will get more narrow because we're more confident. One day out, we know where it's going to hit. We were not actually in the cone prior to landfall. To kind of reinforce that, it has utility, but only to show you where the storm may go, the center itself, not the whole thing. Other resources on the website, when should I, if I'm going to evacuate, when should I evacuate by? When should I board things up? We have time of arrival winds. When are the winds going to pick up? Most likely in a worst case scenario. And we also have some storm surge graphics on the website. You're not going to have to go looking for this information. It's going to be on the local news. It's going to be on the Weather Channel. It's going to be on our website. You're not going to have a problem with accessing information. Your job is to follow official, consistent forms of information and then make a decision for your family. There's going to be plenty of stuff out there. Just want you to focus on the good stuff that's very, very consistent. One way you can do that is social media. NWS for National Weather Service, Morehead City. We're all over the place. If you want to see exactly what we're briefing the mayors on, public officials, first responders, schools, go to our YouTube channel, that recording from Florence. Go look back at what we were telling the community. It's not a 30-second soundbite on social media, but it might be a 5 or 10-minute video, exactly what we think is going to happen. You're paying for that information. Go check it out. And one quick word on social media. You can help the community by sharing things the town is doing or things that the local weather service office is doing. By you sharing good information, you're helping your neighbors. Doesn't help your neighbor to share something 2 weeks out on a storm that could happen. There's a lot of coulda storms that never happened. We don't need to waste our energy on focusing on things to worry ourselves. Focus on consistent stuff. If something's going to happen, you're going to know about it. Follow the local sources of information as a good first step. We're here today to talk about preparedness. On our website is a good one-stop shop, again, for resources. The town will reinforce things you should have. There's checklists out there. There's a lot of good information. On this website, we've got graphics in Spanish, videos for the deaf and hard of hearing, expanding more languages that we distribute this in. Everything is on this page. Planning now is key. Storms are stressful. If you go out to the store today and get your items on a hot and humid day and no stresses, you're going to make really good decisions. If you wait until 3 or 4 days out and you're panicking, you're not sure what to do with your family, should you leave or should you not, you get to the store and the water's out, there is no more water, the canned goods are low, you're not going to make the best decisions. So the key is planning now, preparing now when you're not as stressed. It's really a 3-step process. First step is today, attending forums like this if you're new, or we have experienced folks in the room. That shows you how important it is. They've been through it and they're still here today learning. Continue to learn. So what is your vulnerability? Do you live in a low-lying area? Are you by the waterfront? Are you in an area that floods? Are you only a few feet above sea level? What is your vulnerability in your home? It's not just a weather thing. Do you have elderly parents in your home? I grew up in Baltimore. My plan A for storms leaving was send my family up to Baltimore. Well, my family now lives down by me as they get older so I can help them. So my vulnerability has increased because now I have 2 households, 3 teenagers and older parents to think about where they're going to go. So your vulnerability is not just weather, it's who is in your house. If I lose electricity, it's uncomfortable. It's not life-threatening. I'm not on oxygen. I'm not reliant on electricity for my health needs. So think about your vulnerability. A lot of people talk about storms and staying. It's not just, are you okay at your house? It's not having people being able to get to you to help you like they normally would because of the storm. So what is your vulnerability? Now that you know that, step 2 is kit, having a hurricane kit. Chief Ray is going to talk more about this, things to have in your kit. Bottom line, bare bones, at least 3 days, food, water, medicine, anything you need. That's the floor. That's bare minimum. Have at least that. If you can stretch it out to a week, that would be better. And I know it could be difficult to stretch that out, so Chief Ray has always given this tip. You know, get a few items this weekend. Next week, get a few more. You don't have to all get it in one shot. Since you're planning, we're doing this in July, we still have some time to spread this out. So anything you would need, cash on hand, medicine for your children, your pets, parents, anything you would need, not having to go to the store. For new folks, The reason is you can't just go to the store 2 or 3 days after a storm. Could be a week. Maybe the store is open, but now they have to restock because they haven't had refrigeration. So it's not a snap of your fingers. You don't just get back to normal right away. So you need to be able to be on your own. At least 3 days. If you can do a week, that would be preferred. Last step, what's your vulnerability? Have your hurricane kit. Have a plan to evacuate, even if you've never, ever left. I'm not leaving. I can't leave. I've made it through all the storms. I'm never going to leave. Even if you say that, at least have a plan. It's much easier to plan it out now prior to the storm. What hotel would I go to? What family member would I go to? Than it would be in the, as the storm is approaching. Think about the family that visits us. We live in an awesome area. Go visit them. It's much more comfortable in a relative's house than it is in a shelter. A lot of people ask about sheltering, and that's not really the Weather Service lane to tell you to evacuate or what shelter to go to. But through doing all these talks, I'm learning too from public officials in the town. I'm just a meteorologist. I know weather. I don't know everything. You are much more comfortable in a hotel or a family member's house than you are in a shelter. A shelter is a safe place, but it's not the Hilton, it's not the Marriott, it's a cot, it's a place to be safe. So if you can plan it out now to be somewhere else, that would be preferable. So why do we emphasize this? Why do we have people in the audience that are here? They've been through it. They know all this. They know how many storms we get. We are the most frequently impacted stretch of coastline, and we should lock the doors. We don't want anybody leaving the area. I'm just teasing. But look where we live. Look how nice it is today. It's humid, it's hot. This is Eastern North Carolina. We live in an awesome area. Our responsibility, however, is to prepare each and every year because we do get a lot of storms. That's the cost of living in a really nice area. Handful of times this year, maybe every couple years, we might get a storm, and we need to be prepared. For those that don't have a lot of experience, you'll hear people refer to these storms. I like to show the names because they mean something with a lot of us in the audience. So I was doing some research. 1879 storm had winds potentially in the form of a Category 4, well over 100 miles per hour where we are here in Beaufort. So a lot of storms, a lot of history. No two storms are alike. Just because we've had a Hazel and a Florence and you were okay doesn't mean the next one won't be as bad. So no two storms are alike, but we have had a lot of history in our area because of that proximity to the water. If you're wondering, our peak of hurricane season is not until September 10th. So we will be doing these talks in July and August and September and October because we don't even peak until the water gets its warmest, about September 10th. So when the kids go back to school and it's after Labor Day, don't think, oh, we're through it. We are just around halfway. So please keep that in mind. This graphic emphasizes this. We've had storms as early as May, and we've had storms into the months of October, Matthew and Sandy. Long season. The other thing we haven't had in a while, not to jinx us, but we haven't had an early storm, a July or early August storm. It's been a while. It's a huge difference having a Florence in the fall when it's fairly local people. We still have tourists, but not as much as you would like July. A big difference. So long season, it's not too late. But look at this graphic. Once we get to about August 1st, that frequency of storms, either hurricanes or tropical storms, goes way up. Way up. So August 1st to September 30th is kind of our window for when we have the majority of those storms. One of our biggest challenges is messaging. It's not predicting where the storm will go. Do we get it wrong sometimes? Of course. But the accuracy has improved a tremendous amount. It's making people believe what is possible with these storms, that it actually could be that bad or worse than you think. And a lot of that is around the category of the storm. You will hear people say, I'm not gonna leave unless it's a 2. I'm not going to leave. See, we're looking at each other. We're laughing. I'm my neighbor. I'm not going to leave unless it's a 3. Anything less than a 3, I'm staying. Category, if you remember anything, category is only related to wind. It's important. I'm not saying I wasn't really worried when Florence was a 4 and we live where we do. It's part of the puzzle. It's not the whole puzzle. Category doesn't tell you about rain. Doesn't tell you how many days it sits over you. Doesn't tell you that you had 10 inches of rain the week before. Doesn't tell you what side of the storm you get hit by. It's important, but it's only part of the puzzle, not the whole thing. And for those that have been here, Ophelia, Irene, Matthew, Tropical Storm Hermine doesn't even have to have a number. Those have been impactful storms, almost 200 deaths and $200 billion in damage in those years in the United States from just ones. You've heard about Beryl in the news. When it hit Texas, 3 million without power, lots of flooding. It was just a 1 though, just a 1. Again, categories only related to wind. It doesn't tell the whole thing. Water is what you should focus on. We used to have a graph that showed statistically 85% were water-related deaths, and I thought it was a good graph. I'm a scientist. Like I like pie charts. It looks good. This is more impactful. That's what Hazel did to our community. That's what Isabel did to our community. That's what Florence did to our community. Water, water, water. Whether it's storm surge, rip currents, or flooding, water is what kills people. Specifically, people in cars. We lost 15 people in the state in Florence. 11 were flood-related deaths. All 11 were in vehicles. Storm surge can come up quick, but usually it's people driving through barricades, flooded roads, things of that nature. So never ever cross a flooded road. Water, water, water is what's most important. Past experience can be good, but it just depends on your perspective. This is Hurricane Joaquin in 2015. That's downtown Beaufort. Never got here. It was offshore. It was South Carolina. But the combination of that and a front, we got over 20 inches of rain from a storm that never even hit here, and we had flooding. Florence is on the left. A lot of people, I still remember standing in church the Sunday before Florence, and my priest asked, can you speak about the storm? And I still was new here. I had only been here about 9 months or whatever it was, and it was 5 days out, so we're still kind of, that 5 days out can be questionable, but it looked pretty bad. And a lot of people said, hey, I've stayed for every storm, I'm not leaving. And I don't tell people what to do, but I said, it's been a long time since we had a storm that hit us with that right side of the storm. Huge difference. So it depends on where it hits, when it hits, a lot of variables come into play. So no two storms are alike. After the storm is equally important. We spent a lot of time on our kit. Where are we gonna go? That's all important stuff. If you get a generator, know how to use it. Don't put it in a garage. Don't put it in an enclosed space. And you might say, Mr. Eric, I didn't come to this talk to hear that I shouldn't put a generator in a garage. We lose people every storm because of carbon monoxide poisoning. If you're not usually on a ladder, if you're not usually doing yard work, you don't need to be the first person to clean up your yard in the neighborhood. We lose people to heart attacks, things like that. So nearly half of our deaths now are actually occurring after the storm. So we're improving prior to the storm. Don't rush to get back here. The water is nasty when it floods. Don't be trudging through it. There's a lot of not so good stuff after the storm. So don't be in a hurry. It's going to take a while to clean up afterwards. So we're going to end with what you should focus on. If I'm telling you not to focus on the category of the storm, what should you pay attention to? Category is part of it, but you should pay attention to how much rain are we going to get? What's the storm surge? What's the rip current threat? What are the winds? Winds are important, and the tornadoes. Those are the 5 threats. You do not have to be a meteorologist. You watch your local news, your favorite meteorologist, watch your weather channel, watch us. Whoever you want to watch, that's fine. But pay attention to those 5 things and not just the category. Storm surge we'll put at number 1. That's one of our highest risks where we stand today here in Beaufort. That's an example of Bertha in the mid-90s down in Pine Knoll Shores. Don't assess your vulnerability based on previous storms. Florence was bad, but we've had worse. A storm does not have to make landfall to cause bad storm surge in our area. Again, the closest example would be Florence. It didn't make landfall here. It's down in Wilmington. Much of our area is vulnerable to storm surge, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a hurricane. This is 2023 Ophelia on Cedar Island. Doesn't even get a number, and we had storm surge. Florence, of course, is the one we talk about a lot on the right. That's Harker's Island Road, and then Dorian in 2019. So it could be a hurricane, low end, doesn't matter the category. We've had them all. We get flooding in downtown on sunny days at high tide. So again, it doesn't take a meteorologist to surmise. If you combine that with a tropical storm or hurricane, we're going to have some issues. This is a reasonable worst case scenario. A Category 3, this has happened before. It will happen again. This is not some out-of-the-world scenario. I'm making the craziest one. This is kind of down east in Beaufort, downtown, just to show you much of down east Carteret is vulnerable. Anywhere in yellow is greater than 3 feet of storm surge. Chief Ray is going to show you a much cooler video than I have. All I can do is stomp my feet and say in low-lying areas by the water that are normally dry, that would be 3, 6, 9 feet of water above where you stand. Does not take into account wave action on top of it. So, point of that is much of down east Carteret is vulnerable. And then specifically in Beaufort, you'll see much of the town is as well. I know this is hard to see, but if you look right along the waterway, Front Street, that area, that would be greater than 9 feet of storm surge. And we've had values like that with that storm in the 1800s I mentioned. There's estimates of 8 feet of surge in Beaufort. So it's happened before. It will happen again. Not a lot of high spots, but kind of where we are. And Chief Ray was talking to me. I love hearing about the history. So if anybody wants to educate me more, was talking about Pine Street. We do have some higher elevations here. That's those blue areas, but everywhere else, 3 to as much as 9 feet of surge. So we are in a low-lying area most of the town. Most of the town is, and again, Cat 3 is, that's a reasonable worst case. It will happen. It's just a matter of when. So storm surge is one threat. Anytime you get a lot of rain, you can have flash flooding. Category is not related to rainfall. Florence was a 1 because of wind. We got 20 to 30 inches of rain. You don't have to be a meteorologist to know it could be a January day, and if you get 20 to 30 inches of rain, you're going to have a problem. Doesn't have to have a hurricane name with it. So anytime you get heavy rain, you're going to have some problems. This is an example to highlight why flood-related deaths are so common. Water is extremely powerful. Only takes about 1.5 feet of water to carry you away. We don't get a lot of flowing water here. The difference would be storm surge, but we're very flat, but we can sometimes, especially just inland. And we're not talking Boone or Asheville, but if you just drive inland, once you live down here long enough, you'll realize what a hill is, because you just drive a little bit inland and you're like, wow, you know, I guess I really do live in a flat area. When you get just a little bit of terrain, you can get flash flooding like that. You don't realize if how deep the water is, or if the road exists. So you might say, of course I wouldn't drive through that. But if you're driving at night, you may not realize it's that deep or the road even exists. So turn around, don't drown. Most flood deaths are in vehicles. It's not that it comes up and it surprises you. It's people going in vulnerable locations. We do get river flooding, not necessarily where we are, but as you come back to the area, if you go by, in Kinston on Highway 70, that will be closed. Since we're at the end of the river system, it can take a couple days to come up, and they remain elevated for many, many weeks. Usually not closed for weeks, but we do get river flooding inland. So if you choose to evacuate, be careful coming back. The way you left is probably not going to be the way you come back. A lot of our roads inland are closed. Respect those signs. Don't be in a rush. Don't be in a hurry. It'll still be here. We would rather replace things than you. So just take your time coming back. Rip currents, traditionally one of our biggest killers in the Carolinas. This is prior to a storm or after a storm, or even a distant storm. For those that have been here, we lost more people because of Hurricane Lorenzo in 2019, 4 at the North Carolina beaches, than we did with Dorian. Dorian devastated Ocracoke, and we didn't lose anybody. If you have a big storm in the ocean, it creates swell. You can have dangerous rip currents. And they don't look like a thunderstorm day. So you go out today, it looks really nice. Rip current risk can be high. So if we're advertising that on social media, please share that with folks. Newcomers to the area know how to get out of one. Doesn't pull you under, it pulls you out. Nothing to be afraid of, but knowing how to swim left to right, swimming at a lifeguarded beach, or just not going in the water when the red flags are flying. As long as you know that, you're good to go. Weather's to be respected, it's not to be afraid of. Second to last is wind. We put this near the bottom because statistically this will damage your house. This will knock down trees, but less than 10% of deaths come because of wind. This is Hurricane Arthur. We also show you this because this was July 2014, very compact, small Category 2 storm. For most of our area, really was not a big deal. but from where we stand east through the Outer Banks, it was a bigger deal. Hurricane Irene, 3 years prior, bigger deal. But it was only a 1, but it was larger and much smaller. So just re-emphasizing it's not all about category. The other point of emphasis with this, just a small shift left or right, we would have had stronger winds over more of our area if that shifted at the end. So that's something to remember. As we wrap things up, tornadoes are another thing we can get. This is Bogue Inlet Pier in Emerald Isle. If you choose to stay, it's just a tropical storm, it's a minimal hurricane, that's fine. Make sure your phone is charged up, it's not turned on Do Not Disturb, you have a NOAA weather radio with a battery backup, you're watching the local news. Unlikely you're at a restaurant or you're out shopping, but if you get those tornado warnings, you just need to seek shelter as quickly as possible. Because pretty much every storm we do get tornadoes. You know, most of the area in Dorian was not a big deal, except if you were in Ocracoke, but Emerald Isle was a big deal with that tornado. So what can you do now, especially for the new folks? It seems overwhelming. There's a lot. There's a lot we have zero control over, but you do have control over going out to the store tonight or this weekend. Just start and get your water. I was just at the store, plenty of bottled water. People tease us for getting the forecast wrong. I can guarantee you if we get a storm, we will run out of those things. It's going to happen. So you have control over that. You have control over sharing it with neighbors that couldn't attend. You have control sharing this information. The town is recording this. So you have a lot of control over that. Mention we live in a really, really nice area. It's our responsibility to take this serious each and every year. We'll hope it doesn't happen. We'll enjoy the nice weather that we have today, and then we'll move on to next year. My email address is there if you ever want a presentation like this. I was talking to one of the ladies earlier that got here. We do these at churches. We do these wherever we can, where we can get in front of people. The more we can educate the public, the safer we'll be. You're your biggest ally in terms of safety, so we want to really get this information out there as best we can. So now I'm going to turn it over to the town. They're going to kind of talk about town-specific stuff, and we bring some superstars here because we have hands-on stuff. We have cool videos. So I was kind of the vegetables of the talk, and now we have the dessert coming up. So. And real quickly, a shameless plug while Chief Ray comes up here. I usually do not have a beard, but my family talked me into doing a play. So we're in Fiddler on the Roof. You will see it. I'm serious. I haven't done anything since 5th grade. So this will be around town. It's Elysian Players. It's behind the Waffle House in Morehead City. Last 2 weekends of this month and the 1st in August. So usually I don't look this crazy, but that's why.
Thank you, Eric. Anyone that's not familiar, I'm Tony Ray. I'm with the Fire Department in Beaufort. My outline is going to come up. I don't do the great graphics and everything like Eric does in a lot of different parts. But I'm going to share the same thing with you. I want you to be able to take something home. You know, you're my best new friend. Thank you. Yeah. When I look at this, I want you to walk home with something. If you take something away from here today and someone says, where did you get that? I want you to have paper in your hand so you're able to say. Just like Eric, I want to start off with history. With history, and we look at hurricanes, and this is a hurricane forum. And when I talk history, I'm not going to try to date anyone, but was anyone here, lived here during Hurricane Hazel? 1954, Category 4 or 5 hurricane. Major impact. We saw some of the photographs. You know, how about Donna? Now we're starting to get more. 1960, Category 2 hurricane, come in at Topsail Beach and come straight up the coast. We come up and go. I've jumped forward quite a bit. Bertha and Fran, 1996. See, a lot more of us lived here at that point and lived in the area, or it had the impact. We jump up to Isabel. Now we're in the 2012, 2013, 14 territory. So we start to look at the impact. Did we run out, ma'am? No, sir. Excellent. You know, so we take the impact of how this hits us. And then we have hurricanes a lot of time, just like Florence taught us, they get to our area of the world and they want to get into wanderlust. They sit out there. They sit out there and they keep the impact. You know, Hurricane Florence, Eric brought up a good point a few minutes ago. Florence never came on land in our area. It went down to Wrightsville Beach, but it sat here for 50 hours. And Florence dumped how much rain? 26 to 30, depending on who's telling the story. You know, so when I take and I try to tell you 26 to 30 inches, we'll go to 30 inches. How tall is your grandchild? That's 30 inches. Now this from the top of the chair, 30 inches tall. But when I talk 30 inches, I bring this concept up. Eric and I were talking earlier. If you ride out just a little ways out of the town and you look at a 100-acre field and think 30 inches of rain. If you look out that door and think 30 inches of rain over an extended period. Anyone that was here during Florence, you understand the impact that came in on us just from something that simple. You know, so Florence, Dorian, a year after, we had Dorian come in here. Dorian was a very fast-moving storm where Florence sat on us for 50 hours. Going back to where we are with our outline, I'm going to approach this more from a municipal. It'll be two elements today. It'll be a municipal aspect of how we do declarations of emergency, states of emergency, what we do when we talk about voluntary evacuation, mandatory evacuations, our first part. So to get there, I want to go a little bit about the town of Beaufort. This is our emergency operations manual. This manual was produced, Rachel, I'll give Rachel credit, I'll give Chief Paul credit. It took a group of us that worked to come up. We didn't call this the hurricane. It used to be the hurricane preparedness, hurricane response, or hurricane reentry. But we took it to the emergency operation plan for the town of Beaufort. Primarily addresses how the town staff, how the town personnel, how the town will approach a hurricane is most of what our base is here. But Eric keeps talking about hurricanes and talking about don't focus on the category. One of the big ones off that category, we're trying to be prepared also if we have a tornado. We have tornadoes all year long. So we try to address how we're going to operate in the town. You don't focus on category. If I look across the street and I see a bear coming this way, and I try to go back in my head and think, okay, brown bear run up a tree, black bear run down the hill. It's a what's coming at us? It's a bear. So when we talk about hurricanes, hurricanes don't sneak up on us most of the time. So we talk about people being prepared for hurricanes. If they don't sneak up on us, if we go back and look categorically, or go back historically again and look, the Category 5 hurricanes that have struck the United States coast, the 5 category 3 days earlier were barely a tropical storm. So you went from less than 72 miles an hour straight up to 150 plus that quickly. And how prepared am I? We've developed our preparedness manual where we go out and we look 3-4 days back, then we have 3 days back, 2 days back. You get in that last 24 hours, I hope you've made a plan. I hope you've made a plan. We look at evacuation or declaring states of emergency. There's two elements that you see on here. Number one, we're talking about public use and guidance. We're trying to get information out to you. We're trying to get the information out that we go into our plan. We started a couple months ago as the town staff, the key staff or the department heads, looking at our individual departments, taking inventory. So when I talk about preparedness, how many of you videoed your house, taken photographs of your house? So when you talk to your insurance agent, at least you have something to back it up with in July. So we talk about preparedness. So this is when we go with guidance that we're trying to put out there for you. We're watching the storm, the path, the strength, the speed, and the timing. Which side of the storm are we on? Eric has brought up several times about whether it was not a direct hit. And what's the difference in this? We're being on the west side of that storm, the east side of that storm. If you think about it, throughout a storm, if you're a direct hit, you're going to get pretty much every direction on a compass of winds. You know, we talk about where are they strongest, how is it doing? Is it a large storm, small storm, or very compact? Beryl, this storm it just went through, Hurricane Beryl went up to 4 or 5 when it was out in the ocean and getting good strength. We've watched it for days and days, well, for weeks now. Watched Beryl come and produce. Beryl was a very tight hurricane, and it came through Jamaica. Then it took a turn that we were just starting to look at a week ago, anticipating the turn that it took. Initially, it was going straight through Mexico. It took a turn, and Galveston, Texas right now can tell you what a Category 1 hurricane feels like. And now it's still moving right on up through Ohio now. So which side of the storm? Wind speed. Wind speed. We talk about a tight storm, talk about a big storm. When you're talking 100 plus miles per hour, what does it matter? You're talking wind speed. We have all these beautiful trees around here. I never will forget one thing that really struck me about Florence. I came home and that large crepe myrtle in front of my house did not have a leaf on it. But 2 weeks later, boom, you didn't know anything had happened to that crepe myrtle. So we talk about the wind speed and what it does and how it can affect you. The speed of the storm, this is how fast that storm's moving. Burrow has been slow. Very slow. We've been tracking it. There was Invest 96 right behind it. We've been watching what was coming behind it, very concerned. When we talk percentages, the only thing I can truly give you is I give you a 95% chance we will not have a tropical cyclone hit us between now and 5 o'clock. I wouldn't go anywhere else out there. Rachel and I were looking yesterday afternoon, going on some websites that we watch continuously. By 8 o'clock this morning, we'd already briefed on what's out there, what we're looking at going forward for the next couple of weeks. But all of a sudden, Rachel said, "What's this?" Sitting southeast of us, you can see a big swirl going on. Big swirl. So things come up, things happen quickly. Rainfall predictions. We just talked about what 30 inches looks like. What happens with a big thunderstorm in Beaufort? We get 2 or 3 inches of rain. How does that affect you now? 2 or 3 inches of rain in an hour or two, what's that do to your community? Yeah, it can be very impactful. The tides, when's the hurricane going to hit? We look at timing. If it hits at high tide, and we know right now if we have a good moon tide, we can get flooding down on Front Street. We can get flooding back on certain areas, the end of Pine Street, flooding area all back through different parts of town. Eric and I were talking, we were checking it just before. We're right now at 8 foot above sea level. 8 foot above sea level. We talk about storm surge coming in. And this is the cool video Eric was talking about we're going to go to now. I want you to, when we go through this video, this was done by the Weather Channel. And this was done just prior to the early predictions of Hurricane Florence. When you make your decisions, am I going to stay or am I not going to stay? Well, this video will give you an idea of what storm surge is, what water does, and what water can do. Jason, could you roll that? Thank you.
Storm surge is often the deadliest part of a hurricane. Let me show you what that looks like, starting with a 1 to 3 foot water rise above normally dry ground. Now this might not sound like much, but remember, this is flowing water being pushed by the wind. We know that 1 to 3 foot of storm surge can knock you off your feet, stall out cars, and even carry cars away. It is too late to evacuate when the water rises to this level. But let's go above.
Back to the beginning.
Storm surge is often the deadliest part of a hurricane. Let me show you what that looks like, starting with a 1 to 3 foot water rise above normally dry ground. Now this might not sound like much, but remember, this is flowing water being pushed by the wind. We know that 1 to 3 foot of storm surge can knock you off your feet, stall out cars, and even carry cars away. It is too late to evacuate when the water rises to this level. But let's go above that. Let's go 3 to 6 feet, for example. Very large objects can be carried in this kind of flowing water. They can act as battering rams and enhance the damage. But let's go even above that. 9 feet of storm surge. This kind of storm surge is not survivable unless you move to the higher floors of whatever structure you happen to be in. So please follow the advice of the local officials and evacuate as ordered when a hurricane moves in.
This was produced by the National Weather Service. By the Weather Channel. There was a beginning intro on that. As I said, this was done just before Hurricane Florence. On the inside, on the very beginning of the original video, it shows Morehead City, Beaufort, Newport. It shows the predicted storm surge. Anyone here from Newport? Could you tell me, were you here during Florence? That 9 foot look familiar in Newport? Yes. The rescue efforts, that was prior to me being with the town of Beaufort. The rescue efforts, and I talked to the crews that went to Newport that were pulling people out of houses, were bringing people, animals, everything, trying to bring them back. They would talk about the boat props hitting the top of chain link fences, hitting the top of signposts. So the 9-foot storm surge, when you go making ideas and you go making decisions, am I going to stay? Am I going to stay? Back on the evacuation orders, we have two elements that we look at. Well, number one is for you, making decisions on what you're going to do. Number two is a lot of procedural decisions that go on from a municipal aspect for us. When we look at making declarations, either voluntary or mandatory, or the mayor signs a state of emergency, we set into effect right there a lot of programs that is going to allow us to recoup our expenses. When those big dump trucks run through here and pick up all that stuff in front of your house and haul it out and do what they do with it, when they get all that trash picked up, all those limbs picked up and everything and put where it belongs, they're expecting a check then. You don't tell them, well, when FEMA reimburses us 3 and 4 years later. So a lot of this is procedural for us when we go through states of emergency. If we declare a state of emergency, it's really time for you to pay attention. I hope you're listening to that on your radio going west. Going west. Voluntary and mandatory evacuation orders. Voluntary orders are informational as best guidance for you. When we issue a voluntary evacuation order, no one's coming to your house to make you leave. But it's them when you need us. A lot of the paper over here, know your zone, make early plans for evacuation. Make early plans. So I did this type of presentation 4 years ago. I made a comment. I said, I want you to go. Is anyone here medically, or does anyone live in your household that's medically fragile? After Florence, we had 5 days without electricity. A lot of people on oxygen machines, a lot of people whose medication need to be cooled or kept cool, but for 5 days. Now 5 days, we can do without cable vision for 5 days. Are we okay? Maybe don't even have an internet, but you're going to get internet now for 5 days. You know, we might be able to do okay without power for 5 days. It's kind of fun camping day 1, day 2, is it not? How much fun is it sleeping in an 85-degree house? No, it's not good. No, it's not good. And we're very lucky, the majority of us live in the town of Beaufort. We're on the water and sewer system for the town of Beaufort. So normalcy is a really good thing as long as I have running water and, most importantly, flushing toilets. How long are you going to be comfortable without flushing toilets? That's another big one I'll go to right there. So we start making decisions, am I going to stay? And I made the comment, someone told me, so I don't know anybody to the west. Well, I would go now and make a friend. I'd go now and make a friend. It's now is when you think that direction. Now you think that direction. You know, I come down and pay close attention to trusted news sources. Is the internet always the best trusted news source? You know, because you're going to get, if I get on that social media and it's like, we've never left. My grandfather never left, I'm not leaving. But if I told you it's a category 3 coming, or category 4 or 5, did your grandfather really know that was coming? No. And we call ourselves the educated generation, right? So does that change if I tell you there's a category 3 coming? You went and had that generator put in your house, right? Are you prepared for all that? You know, so these are good adult situations that we want you to think of. Now we take it and go to a mandatory evacuation order. Chief Paul sitting back there of the police department, Chief Burdett. Him and I talked about this yesterday, is getting these ideas out there. We are not going to come, we cannot legally make you come leave your house. The police department cannot legally come make you leave your house. But when we declare a mandatory evacuation, you need to understand a few things from our point. A lot of things drawn up in here, and there's a big section in here on statute law. North Carolina statute law, how you declare emergencies, how you declare different things. I'm duly bound with the group of firefighters I have, and the group of chief with a group of police officers and the town staff. I'm legally bound to look after them. So we've established criteria. When we make a mandatory evacuation order, it's time for you to understand when we hit certain wind speeds, when we hit certain extreme weather conditions, we're more than likely not coming out. We're more than likely not coming out. We need to be there when the storm passes so we can come out. So when we get wind speeds and we get wind gusts and we start hitting certain numbers, we're sitting. We will go, and what we'll do is what we call stack calls. We initiate the Emergency Operations Center, and we'll start taking calls all through the day or night, and we'll write them down. And as soon as we think we can make a move, we'll go for that. You know, so when we make an a mandatory evacuation order, you cannot be told to leave your property. But by now, I hope you've made good decisions. We've tried to look at storm surge. We've looked at our best guesses, and so we go into that mode. Mariana Hollenshed, the statement at the bottom of your page, government cannot do it all, citizens must be resourceful and prepared. This is from 2019 in a wrap-up I did with the town, and this was our commissioner at that time, Mariana Hollenshed, made this comment to me. That it was so impactful. We're going to do everything we possibly can. We're going to make notifications. We're going to do all the states of emergency. We're going to do everything we can to help you. But at some point, we've got to protect ourselves. Because if a category 3 comes, 4 comes, 5 comes, there's going to be a group of us here. That's part of what we're supposed to do. Because when the storm passes, and it looks like Hurricane Hazel, and the storm passes, where are you going? Every community has 3 things. It has churches, it has fire stations, and it has hair salons. Every community. You know, so when the storm passes, where are you going to go?
Where will the county have their emergency location for people to go to if they're for shelter?
Okay, when they stand up the shelters, they stand up shelters in Newport, if they can. Understand, when we look at storm surge and we look at a lot of things, they're looking at it sheltering in in either Beaufort Elementary or Beaufort Junior High. That's not totally set up yet. I mean, when you set up a shelter, it gets very particular.
Typically, the original shelters are outside of the county. Actually, during Florence, they were over near Raleigh. And then as the storm was coming in, Newport was then set up. And then days after, Beaufort was set up. But those are last resorts. The best thing is outside of the county.
You'll hear Atlantic Elementary School. Uniquely, that's one of the highest places in the whole county. It's about 20, 25 foot, 30 foot above sea level, but it becomes an island. Someone talked about Newport, becomes an island. They're isolated there. And when you have a situation like that, Red Cross will not recognize that as a shelter. So another thing Rachel talked about, the idea of the shelter, and do you have pets? If you look for a shelter, that comes into play also if I'm wanting to take my pets. Because during Florence, the nearest shelter, I believe, was Johnson County that would accept you and your pets. So preparations ahead of time. Preparations ahead. Pre-season preparedness. Let's talk about us now. Pre-season preparedness, the go bag. I can tell you in my house, there is a bag that if we travel, if there's a bag, if we're doing something, that bag goes with us. And that's got copies of our birth certificate. It's got the important stuff is in that bag. You know, now my wife is in charge of the bag. I'm not touching it. I'll go, I know what it looks like, and I know where to get it. But the go bag, your personal needs, cash, credit cards, debit cards. And understand that Eric made a statement earlier about the grocery store being shut down. Well, if you lose power in a grocery store, after 24 hours, it's 88 degrees outside today. After 24 hours, what good is that meat and deli section? Okay? But we always say, well, why won't they just open the doors? You know, we want to go buy something, we have cash. In the grocery store environment or any type of store environment now, what happens on the front of that store is just as important as everything stocked in that store. You cannot do business if the front of that store is not operating. They can take your credit card, they can make transactions. Number one. Number two, am I just going to openly open my dark store and let you wander around? Because now if you trip, there's a lot of things can happen inside that kind of business that comes into play. In my go bag, I'm going to have cash credit. I'm going to have insurance papers. I'm going to know something about, you know, my insurance. I've told you I've got everything inventoried already. I've got videos and photographs of everything in my house. I've got prescriptions. I have enough prescriptions now, but can I take that prescription somewhere else? CVS does not have a generator, so they may be out of operation same time you are. So know that you're prepared that way. Your medical records. If you're traveling out of town, do you have all of that with you? So the valuable kind of things that we think. There's a couple papers over here from the Department of Insurance in North Carolina that talks about other things that you really want to have with you as you start to leave town. How many times have you heard personal survival kit? Do you have one prepared? Really? Excellent. I'm very proud because y'all, not many heads doing this. What is a personal survival kit, folks? See what that says? Tony, there's another one in my house. It says Sherry. You know, but in this is just essential things. Got gloves. Got what I'm going to need to be hygiene. Trash bags. Simple things that just come into play. Hand sanitizer. Bleach, cleaning wipes. I got to cook, right? I got to cook. You know, how long is that gas stove? How good is light? And it's rechargeable, so I'm trying not to depend totally on batteries. I got a generator, I got a vehicle, you know, so I can run things. The good old-fashioned radio, weather radio. You know, if I lose communication, how am I going to keep up? Hand sanitizer, sanitary wipes. Backup of all my inventory in my house. You know, so it's a real live kit. It's a real live kit. But I also, as you can tell, I love to eat. This is self-prepared, already bought kit. My wife likes to eat. Water purification system, small shelters, emergency blankets, food for frozen or freeze-dried or emergency type MRE meals, made ready to eat type ideas. We talk about this kit, but I also talked about we developed our emergency operation manual for the town, not talking about just hurricanes. Some of you told me you've lived here for quite a while. Do you remember the snowstorm of 78, I think it was? Maybe it was the late 80s, and we had like 16 inches of snow. Furniture Fair in Jacksonville, the building collapsed. We did not build buildings with snow loads here. But Furniture Fair killed one gentleman, collapsed. So an emergency kit is year-round, your personal survival kit. Water. If you know a storm's coming and you've made that decision we're staying, where's your best water source? The water heater, and hopefully you filled that bathtub by now. You know, because that idea of just water, and you heard me say water purification system. I can take the water right out of that drainage ditch behind me and make water. Or I can make it out of the bathtub. But the bathtub, I forget how many gallons right off the top of my head a typical bathtub will hold. But you're looking at 1 gallon of water a day to drink. That's not to clean, that's not to do anything, but 1 gallon of water a day per person. As I said, this box says Tony, the other box says Sherry, that's my wife. You know, so I need that for each one. Cooking, food, I've got 7 to 10 days. What we learned during Florence when we didn't have power, we didn't have resources for 5 days or more, I might have myself well prepared for 7 days. I guarantee you there's a lot more at my house. But what about my neighbor? Because when I asked how many of you have a personal kit ready, I had a couple heads in the room doing this. So 7 to 10 days, be prepared. If we get another 30 inches of rain, how much water did that cut us off down here, isolated us? Highway 17, Highway 24, where could we get more resources coming in? That becomes one of our biggest challenges. Clothes that you can use, hygiene, clothes, sleeping arrangements, sleeping bags, something to sleep on. We can sleep on the floor when we get tired. Radios, electronics, have a charging source or have batteries on hand. Fuel. one interesting thing, I remember I was not here during Florence, but calling neighbors back and saying, what can I do? How can I help? Day one, they're like, well, we're doing okay. We're cooking on the grill. We're getting gas on our generators, but now the boathouse has opened up their gas line. Speedway had to get a generator hooked up. And then they finally doing it. Second day was, well, we don't need anything. You don't have to bring anything back, you know, but we got to take these gas cans back down to either the boathouse or somewhere to get gas. Third day was like, all right, 85-degree house is no fun. There was a basketball tournament or something going on during that whole time, and they were talking about there's no cable vision now. But now we're loading these cans up and going back down and standing 2 hours in line to get fuel on that generator. So have a fuel plan of some type. Can you get it out of your boat? Can you get it out of your car? Have a fuel plan. Your pets. How many of you here would not leave your pets? That's pretty much everyone. You know, your pets, do you have a plan for them? There's a paper over here about things to think about. What about your pets' health records? What about your pets in that way? Insect repellent. This came from Mariana Hollenshed again. She talked about, number one, not just mosquitoes, not just things, but she talked about ants. The invasion of ants. When the water went down, the invasion of ants because they got hungry too. So just some ideas to think about. Making plans to evacuate. Something I brought up a few minutes ago about a Category 3 or higher. Category 3. Well, Category 2, Florence was a Category 1 that never got to us. And those of you that lived here then, you remember how the stuff was piled up on the side of the roads. We did a hurricane thing in Louisiana a few years ago, and there it was again. Stuff packed up, stacked up 15, 20 foot high on the side of the street. You remember the sheetrock, the furniture, the mattresses. Things. So they make plans to evacuate if you possibly can. A home inventory, and know how to close up your house if you're going to leave. Do you know how to cut off your water at the street? Do you know how to shut off your gas? Do you know how to secure your fuel tank, your propane tanks and everything? Get them up high. Those things float very good. You know, this is one thing as a firefighter and responding. I did my time in Charlotte when we used to come down for hurricane events would make deployments. That's one thing we always talked about was all the propane tanks everywhere. So something to know how to secure your home, how to shut off your utilities, how to exchange information with your neighbor. Who knows you've left? Another thing that I talk a lot about is take a baggie, take a note card, write your name, write your contact. If you're going to stay here, write your contact, write your next of kin, write somebody you want us to call. Put that card in that baggie and put it in your pocket. I don't mean to be gruesome about it, but put it in your pocket. It's going to help us quite a bit. Those little things like that. And then I spoke a few minutes ago, how long can you go without all the utilities that make us comfortable? Things to think. Post-storm events, making your property safe. Making your property safe. If you got a tree leaning on your house, your neighbor has a chainsaw, how good are you with the chainsaw? You know, you think about these things. As I said, I worked in Charlotte when Hurricane Hugo, 200 miles inland, came through Charlotte. I got married that weekend. We're still married somehow, but we got married that weekend. Hurricane Hugo, but the people going out and buying chainsaws. Back then, when you bought a brand new chainsaw, the chain was on backwards. And we got a lot of kicks out of going and deploying out and talking to different communities. And they're like, we just paid, I don't know how much for this chainsaw and it don't work. Yeah, so I've got some stories, but it's some things that people don't understand. Making your property safe, now your neighbor says, can you cut my tree off my house? It's like when your neighbor says, can you wire my ceiling fan? I'm not a licensed electrician. When your house burns down, who are you going to talk to? You know, so working with the insurance representatives, hopefully you've got that inventory set. Be aware, this is a lot of parts from the Department of Insurance of fraudulent scam artists who will come into this area. Roofers, people that are going to do all this for you. Be aware, keep your guard up. Debris cleanup and removal. There was did that go out over there, Rachel? The debris cleanup piece? Maybe, let me check. I thought I brought it, but there's in the town website, about when, after the storm passes, how you stack debris, how you stack household item, how you stack appliances, furniture and everything. There's a distinct way they need to go in front of your house. As those big trucks are coming through and picking it up, they may come through today and pick up all the brush, all the tree limbs, but you're going to say, well, why didn't they get everything? Well, everything has to go in distinct places when we go through these events. The next day they may come through and pick up all the sheetrock, because that goes totally somewhere else. It's a massive coordinated event or effort that goes on. Debris cleanup, and folks, I'm going to leave you with the last one, your mental health after a storm. After a few days, be aware of yourself. Be aware of yourself. It's a very, very stressful thing. As Eric made the point earlier, try to make those decisions now in preparation. Try to make them in preparation now. Thank you. Any questions? Eric, come on up. We'll open the floor up. Is there any questions? This is a forum. This is give and take.
One thing I was curious, and if there are any hard questions, you can ask Chief Ray those. I'll take the easy ones. But a few of you raised your hand and said you had been here for a while. We went over some things to have. Is there anything you do different, having been through storms, that you wish you had done? You know, next time around, I'm definitely going to do this. Or if this first time I was here, I wish I knew this when I moved here or lived here. Anybody willing to share tips that we didn't cover, or you wish you would do differently the next time around? It could be anything from kit to whatever, anything.
Yeah. Yes,
I've been here all my life over working with the government. What I learned, my chief, he's back there, and the vice chief is back there. We stayed during the last hurricane, and we watched the tide come in. We are volunteer firefighters. And as much as I love my community, I don't think I'll do it again. For one, it was a hazardous situation. We saw things that, I never seen before, caskets coming out, you know. It was very kind of traumatized in a way, it was. But one thing I love is that we did stick together, and when we was able to go out to help the community, Chief made sure that that's what we did. But I think I will go find me a neighbor in the West or something.
From the last storm that we had, I live a block off the waterfront, but we didn't get any salt water in our yard. It was all fresh water. The system for getting rid of storm water here is not the best in the world. And also, all the drainage points were flooded. They had nowhere for the water to go. So I had 18 inches of water in my front yard built up. So it's going to happen with rain.
Great points. Thank you. You brought up another point about when the storm was passed. I cannot urge enough caution, folks. When a storm passes, everybody wants to get out and go see. Everybody wants to get out and go see. Look at your phone, find out what the people had to get out and go see. If you don't know how a telephone pole works, Lauren Wargo just came in the room. She's with Duke Power. She's our regional or divisional director of governmental and community relations. And Warren's done an incredible job. I was in a class this morning with Lauren, where she was talking about Duke Power being ready. But if you don't know how a power pole works and the wires are on the ground, that's something we can't describe how dangerous things are. And people want to get out and get in their car and go look at things. And 3 days later, they're wondering where they're going to get gas that they just burn out. If you're going to do anything, check on your neighbor. Check on your neighbor and make sure they're okay.
We didn't get out in the automobile, we got out in the fire truck.
Good. Lauren, would you like to say a few things? Thank you.
So I apologize for being a little unprepared. I just heard about this meeting this morning, but I just wanted to reiterate that if you are a Duke Energy customer, we have an outage page where you can track the outages in your neighborhood and your community. This can be useful if you're looking to see if you have power at your church or your house. You can really check any location, and a lot of times they'll provide the detail of the outage and an estimated restoration time. Duke Energy tries to be really conservative on that restoration time because we don't want to give anyone false hope. So a lot of times keep track of that restoration time, and it will, if it says 6 p.m., might actually go down to 4 and 2 as we get closer to making the repair. Another thing we tell the public and local governments is never assume we know your power's out. Go on our app or our website. You can do it from your phone also, and report your outage, because that helps us understand in this complicated grid network who has power and who doesn't. And you'd be surprised, a lot of times a single home will slip through just because of the mapping. So it's really important that we hear from you and act as a partnership with your local government and the community here. They have my cell phone number. Probably half of Eastern North Carolina has my cell phone number, but use your local elected officials and your county management, your city management, town management, and they're your best resources. And a lot of times we'll have more specific information about outages, which we will pass to them and they will communicate to you. So pay attention to those social media networks, the news, and definitely don't hesitate to ask questions. That's for a hurricane or just a bad storm that comes through. It's the same process for us, but we bring a lot of resources to Eastern North Carolina, and when a hurricane is coming, with the advanced meteorology of the National Weather Service and Duke Energy, we have the ability to see what's coming and strategically stage our resources as close as we can safely. So, any other questions?
Any questions from electrical utilities?
And I think one thing I learned during Florence, you were asking before about the one thing, like anything we learned in previous storms, I would say get a tarp, a big tarp, a couple of them, because for us during Hurricane Florence, we had our roof peel off, and because we had tarps, we were able to get up there and nail it up there, and it did protect a lot of the contents of our home. And afterwards, there was no chance you were gonna go to Lowe's and buy a tarp. So it's just something that can help you to have in advance and really protect a lot of your belongings. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Good point. In preparedness, get a tarp now. Think about who's going up on your roof. A rope can be good. I mean, most of us in the room could probably go do our roof. Could probably go do it, but that's another effort. Be prepared now. Chief Burdett, would you like to say anything?
Use caution and common sense.
Thank you. Thank you. Eric, you good? Good. Good. Mayor?
I think we learned a lot of valuable information here, some of the things that we've done before. I have a kit as well, and my tip on that is check your kit quite often, because batteries do die. Things do expire. So don't put a kit together and think you're prepared and it sits off in the corner, because I have not had to use my kit, thank God, for a while, but I will have to go check it, because you don't want to get to that kit and find out the batteries are dead or something's not working. So do a mandatory check-in on your kits. And I think your bucket is amazing. I don't have a bucket. I went out there, and that's so simple and easy to have. Men are so uncomplicated. I love it. But mine is a little bit more fancier than that. But I do check that, and if I actually gained any weight, I would check my clothes too. Spandex is always a good thing to put in there. But check your kit quite often, and definitely listen to those experts, because that's what we wind up doing. And thank you so much for all that you do.
Thank you, Mayor. Rachel, would you like to fill in on the town webpage?
Yeah, so behind Tony, Chief Ray today, while he was talking, I was scrolling at all the resources that he was talking about. Those all can be found on the town's webpage. When you first arrive at the town's webpage, let me go back to the home page here. What you see on your screen right here is what is going to come up, and you'll find under Residents tab, the first one is the Beaufort, North Carolina Emergency Alerts, which if you have not registered for that, please do. That will give you alerts for all types of weather situations. And then the second one is the Hurricane Preparedness Flood Information, and that's where everything Chief Ray was talking about was found today. We have before, after, during storms. You can also see the type of coverage and updates that you'll get during a storm based on the past ones that are here. So that's really it. Make sure you have multiple ways to receive notifications and stay safe.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Now, I'm one of those fools that stay, because I'm not leaving my stuff, and they don't have a place for my dog. But if you make that decision, make it knowing that you cannot expect our emergency services to give up their life to save yours, because you made that decision. And when it's all said and done and over, and you're waiting for your power, report it and then have patience. We've had a lineman here that died trying to get power back during one of our storms. Hadn't been too many years ago. You know, they want to live too, and their family wants them. So if you stay knowing that don't call anybody. You just stay where you're at until it's safe for somebody to come, and then for God's sake, have some patience about getting things back up, because the people responsible for doing that are doing the very best job they can, and their life is much more valuable than the sweat falling off your head because you're hot.
Thank you, and I will reemphasize what Lauren brought up. You look across the street and you wonder why the light's on there, they're not on here. This is a great presentation her team did today. If you understand how an electrical grid works, doesn't mean they're getting the same power you are. You know, so most importantly, report your outage, your address, and that helps them assess how they're doing their rebuilding as they work their way in. Now, I'm sorry, Lauren. Good point. Thank you. Yeah, that's oxygen machines, CPAPs. There's several devices that we're medically dependent upon. We do have one last question. How can we make this better? I'd love to say we will never have to do another hurricane forum, but how can we make this better? Any suggestions? We welcome them now. I welcome them next week. Stop by the firehouse. I welcome them anytime. Closing?
And while you're thinking of those suggestions, we did it, you know, what is today? I'm losing track of time. Tuesday. Oh, it's all those practices. Tuesday afternoon, that doesn't work for people that might be working today. It might not work for everybody. So we will do talks anywhere, any time of day. So we just need the venue, which we very much appreciate. We've worked through churches. We'll do Saturdays, Sundays, prayer groups, wherever the people are, we'll go. So for those suggestions, just let us know. But we really appreciate you coming on a day like today. That's really nice, but we cannot do it without you. So give us those suggestions. Come up to us. Make sure you get some of the material on your way out. And if you want to talk to us one-on-one and didn't want to ask in front of everybody, don't forget to do that. So I think we're good. Yep.
And then one final thing. Chief Ray did an excellent job. It was very comprehensive. But one of the things that he shared, we can't make you leave your home, but we can control your movements. So a lot of times when a state of emergency comes out, there's going to be a curfew attached to it. Just be mindful of that. That's for your safety and it's for our safety. Just be mindful and share the information. It's going to be pumped out in several different forms. The town does a great job of messaging. Just be mindful that while we can't make you leave, we can't control your movements, but it's just for everybody's safety.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
And then in one of these storms, when there's a mandatory evacuation order, are there published or recommended evacuation routes to head inland?
Yeah.
Based on fuel supply or traffic or road conditions or anything?
That's why I'd make my decision early. Yes, you know there's only 2 or 3 ways out of here. You're going down 24, or you're going out 101, or going out 70, and that's it. And understand, there's, well, Carter County, 60-something thousand people, and you got to think of the number of them are going for that same gas station. So it's plan ahead, plan ahead. Yes, there is know your zone, know your evacuation routes. You see these blue signs have been up here for years that we just drive by. You know, now it's time to enjoy being prepared. Thank y'all very much.